Listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. You will have time to read the instructions and questions and you will be given time to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts.
Now turn to part 1.
You will hear a conversation between a senior librarian and a woman interested in working at the library. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. You will see that there is an example which has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
I'm interested in doing some work for the library. Are you the person to speak to?
Yes. Right. Well, what sort of work are you interested in?
Well, I've just come to live here in Australia. I don't want a full-time job until my children settle down, but I really need to get out of the house a bit. And I heard you need voluntary workers for various projects?
Right.
The woman is interested in voluntary work, so C has been circled in the example. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
I'm interested in doing some work for the library. Are you the person to speak to?
Yes. Right. Well, what sort of work are you interested in?
Well, I've just come to live here in Australia. I don't want a full-time job until my children settle down, but I really need to get out of the house a bit. And I heard you need voluntary workers for various projects?
Right.
But I don't know if I have the right skills.
Well, we do provide training.
Oh!
We always include an orientation to the library, together with emergency procedures. That's fire regulations, emergency exits, first aid so you can cope with accidents or sudden illness. Things like that which are necessary for anyone who's working with the public. Then we give specialist training for particular projects, like using our database system.
I do have quite good computer skills, in fact.
Oh, great.
Is there any sort of dress requirement?
Well, all staff have to wear a name badge, so they can be identified if they go outside the staff-only areas. But apart from that, there aren't many regulations. We ask you to sign in and sign out for insurance purposes, but that's all. How about transport? Do you live locally?
I'm not too far away. I'm at Torpus Beach. My husband needs a car during the day, but it's only about 20 minutes on the bus.
In fact, we can reimburse part of your travel expenses in that case.
Oh! Would that be the same if I came by car?
No, because parking is such a problem here. One thing we are looking for, though, is someone who can drive a minibus.
No problem. So, do the projects involve going outside the library?
Some, yes, but not all. We've just finished one which involved working with photographs taken of the area 50 or 100 years ago. It basically involved what we call encapsulation.
Putting them in some sort of covers to keep them safe?
Exactly. It's time-consuming work, and we were very grateful to have help with it. Then, sometime next year, we're hoping to begin working on an initiative involving the sorting and labelling of objects relating to local history. We'll be needing help with the cataloguing.
Well, I'd definitely be interested. How about at present?
Well, we have a small team who work to support those who are unable to read.
Working with the blind?
Yes, or other groups who have reading difficulties. We provide volunteers with equipment so that they can take books home with them and read them aloud onto CDs. We're gradually building up a collection that can be lent to those who need them.
I can see it would be useful, but I'd really like to do some sort of work where I can get the chance to meet people. How about reading stories to children?
That's done by our regular staff. But we do have another project. It's a very long-established scheme which involves helping those who are unable to have direct access to the library.
Oh, I noticed someone with a trolley of books when I was at the hospital last week. That sort of thing.
That would have been one of ours, yes. It's one of our most popular services. Lots of people who wouldn't dream of going to the library normally when they're at home borrow a book when the trolley comes round the ward.
I can imagine. Yes, I'd definitely be interested in that. Right, so how do I know?
Well, we do ask all volunteers to commit themselves to a regular period each week.
I could probably do 5 or 6 hours.
Oh, be careful not to take on too much. But we do need someone for a couple of afternoons, from 2 to 4, so 4 hours altogether.
That sounds fine.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10 on page 110. Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
Right, so here's the application form. It asks the usual questions, name and address and telephone number. You also need to fill in details of who we should get in touch with in case of any accident or problem like that. We do need to have that filled in. And there's a space for the date of birth, but that's only if you're over 75, so we won't worry about that.
No. Oh, it asks for qualifications. Do I need to provide certificates?
They're not necessary. We'll need the names of 2 referees, not relatives or family members, obviously. What else? Signature of parent or guardian. That won't be necessary, as I assume you're over 18.
Yes. What's this? It says civil conviction check.
That's the document we have to provide by law for those working on projects involving children, so we won't need it in your case. But you will need to sign this separate document. That's a copy of commitment. It's basically an agreement to work according to the library guidelines. So, if you'd like to fill this all in, you can do it here or take it home, whichever you prefer.
I'll take it home if that's okay. Right, well, thank you for your time.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 2.
You will hear part of a local radio program about fighting air pollution in Canadian towns. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14. Good morning, folks, and welcome to the information roundup on your own local radio station. This is Larry Knowles talking to you this morning on Tuesday, the 25th of May. And the first item coming up is a reminder to you all out there about Canadian Clean Air Day, which is on June 6th. In case you weren't around for the last one, this is a chance for Canadians everywhere to focus on the problems of air pollution and to actually try to do something to help reduce the problem. How many Canadians do you think die annually because of air pollution? 2,000? 3,000? Well, the rate is a staggering 5,000, and it's likely to grow unless we do something. And it's this concern with your health that's the driving force behind the government campaign that is sponsoring Clean Air Day. So what causes air pollution in the first place? Well, the transportation sector accounts for 27% of all greenhouse gases produced in Canada. It's also the biggest source of that thick, polluted air from traffic fumes that we call smog. And it's the tiny particles and ground-level ozone in smog that are the main causes of health problems and even deaths across the country. Of course, it's worse in the big cities, but researchers have only recently realized that all you need are low levels of air pollution to seriously damage your health, so we're all at risk. You now have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
So, what can we do to fight air pollution? Well, it should be pretty obvious by now that the way we get to and from work every day can have a big impact on the air we breathe. So the easiest action you can take on Clean Air Day is to accept what we call the commuter challenge and get to work on foot or by cycling for a change. If you have to use your car, try carpooling and share the drive, or better still, use public transit. If everyone tries this for just one day, you'll be amazed by the difference it can make to the air in our towns and cities. But there's more you can do to improve air quality. For example, you can plant trees. And if you don't have a garden, then you can do your bit in other ways. For instance, did you know that modern, improved wood stoves can reduce wood smoke by as much as 80 to 90%? So you can make a big difference if you upgrade the appliances you use in your home. The government is also working hard on your behalf to clean up our air. Its priority is to reduce the emissions that cause smog, and they have clear plans to get there. Last year, Canada and the United States agreed to reduce emissions on both sides of the border between the two countries, and they plan to reach their targets in the next few years. The government's also taking action to get cleaner fuels. It's already reduced the sulfur contained in gasoline, and it hopes to reach the reduction target for sulfur in diesel by next year. But the measures don't just focus on the motorist. The federal government's also working to reduce emissions from power plants and factories right across the provinces. You can find out all about government action and all the plans for Clean Air Day events.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 3.
You will hear a conversation between Carlos, Melissa, David and Simona. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 30. Okay, everyone. Let's look at what presentation tips we come up with for our next seminar, Melissa.
Okay, here's my first tip. Show up early. Some experienced presenters say that something good is bound to happen. I'm not sure about that, but...
Well, you may have a chance to head off some technical problem. Also, at the beginning, before you actually begin your presentation, people filter in slowly. It's a great time to introduce yourself.
Can't argue with that. Simona has some ideas about opening.
Have a strong opening. I picked up a few ideas for structuring your opening. First, never apologise. If you're worried the presentation won't go well, keep it to yourself and give it your best shot. Besides, people are usually too preoccupied with their own problems to notice yours.
I like that.
Open by addressing the following 3 questions. What's the problem? Who cares? What's your solution?
Excellent suggestion. David, you've gone quiet. Well, my next suggestion is PGP. That means that with every subtopic, you should move from the particular to the general and back to the particular. Even though the purpose of a subtopic is to convey the general information, bracing it with particulars is a good way to draw attention and promote retention.
I've got another one. This might not be a tip so much as a law. Give everyone at least one piece of paper. A piece of paper is a record from your presentation. People can use that to help recall the details of the presentation, or better yet, to tell others about it.
The next tip I have is know your audience. This is, of course, a general piece of advice for public speaking. See if you can find out what styles of information a presentation they are most familiar and comfortable with. Adapting your presentation to those styles will leave fewer barriers to the direct communication of your material.
I like that idea. We mentioned possible technical problems before. My next point is that maybe speakers should rethink the overhead projector. Is one really necessary?
I think that often is, but I agree with your basic point, Simona. Don't use one just because it's there. Maybe a good tip is to consider carefully what you're putting on your slides.
Yes, David, that's a very good point to make. Slide content is, well, you don't want too much, too little. Carlos?
Good point, both of you. Another point I have is to respect the audience. Don't condescend by dumbing down your lecture. Show them respect by saying what you believe and what you know to be the whole story.
I also have a point about humour. I think that humour is generally good, but be careful with it. Humour in a presentation works best when it actually drives the presentation forward. If you find you're using canned jokes that don't depend on the context of the presentation, eliminate them. David?
Maybe, Melissa, but always be very careful about jokes that put down a class of people. If you're going to alienate your audience, do it on the merits of your content.
Also, avoid masculine or even feminine pronouns as universals. It can be a nuisance to half the audience. As universals, use the plural they. The Oxford English Dictionary has allowed they as a gender-neutral singular pronoun for years.
Thanks, Simona. Thinking towards the end. Take care with the questions. Many people judge the quality of your talk not by the 20 minutes of presentation, but on the 30 seconds you spend answering the question. Be sure to allow long pauses for questions. 10 seconds may seem like a long pause when you're at the front of the room, but it flows naturally from the audience's point of view.
Let people know you believe your material. Speak with conviction. Believing your subject matter is one of the best ways to speak more effectively.
Finish early, and something good is almost bound to happen. If nothing else happens, people will be able to leave early, and suddenly they'll have an extra couple of minutes to do things they didn't think they'd get to. People will really like you if you do that.
I think we have missed the key point. Practice. Practice over and over and over. If you can, record your presentation. Play it back and watch yourself. You'll discover 1,000 horrible things you never knew about yourself. Now watch it again without the sound. Why are your hands flying around like that? Now listen to it with the picture. Get rid of those ums. Now watch it at twice the normal speed. This emphasizes low-frequency cycles in your gestures. David, those were excellent points. I have one more, something quite simple, but often overlooked. I read that the two most dehydrating things you can do in a modern civilization are live presentations and air travel. I don't know if it's really true, but the message is that the way to stay sharp is to drink a lot of water. Take care of your body, especially your voice. If possible, avoid alcohol too.
So, we've got to organise these points now.
That is the end of Part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 3. Part 4.
You will hear a monologue on the subject of the Celts. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40. Welcome to this introductory lecture on the Celts. Who were the Celts? The Celts were an Indo-European group, that is, related linguistically to the Greeks, the Germanic peoples, certain Italic groups and peoples of the Indian subcontinent. They arose in Central Europe at the beginning of the first millennium BC, and were an iron-using and horse-rearing peoples. By the end of the first millennium BC, their cultural group had spread up and down the Danube and Rhine, taking in Gaul, Ireland and Britain, across Central Europe into northern Italy and northern Spain. Their roaming across Europe led some of the Celtic tribes to sack Rome in 390 BC, creating a fear of the northern barbarians that was to haunt Romans for hundreds of years to come. The Celts are defined archaeologically by the type sites of Hulsat and Latene, the former being taken to relate to an earlier phase of cultural development. Hulsat, an ancient salt mining area, was excavated from 1876 onwards by the Viennese Academy of Sciences, and provided the first classification of the prehistoric Celts. In 1858, the waters of Lake Neuchâtel in Switzerland sunk to a low level, revealing a large prehistoric settlement with a huge number of surviving artifacts. The nearby town of Latene gave its name to the second phase of Celtic cultural development. However, Please note that these phases overlap through time and are defined according to geographical area. Let's look at each of these, taking the Hallstatt first. Hallstatt culture is characterized in 4 stages. A and B were during the late Bronze Age, from about 1200 to 700 BC. C was in the early Iron Age, from about 700 to 600 BC. D was from about 600 to 475 BC. The Hallstatt culture spanned Central Europe, with its centre in the area around Hallstatt in central Austria. There were 2 distinct cultural zones, the eastern and the western. At the start of the period, long-distance trade was already well established in copper and tin, the basic requirements for manufacture of bronze. From about 700 BC, trade in iron also became established. The Hallstatt area also already controlled the trade in salt, crucial when there were few other means to preserve food. Control of these 2 crucial trade goods, iron and salt, provided the basis for the accumulation of wealth and influence. From 800 BC, some burials of rich people can be identified in Central Europe, with grave goods such as wheeled wagons and iron swords. Hallstatt C saw the construction of fortified hilltop settlements to the north of the Alps. These had burial mounds holding very high-quality goods, such as vehicles and expensive imported treasures. By the time of the Hallstatt D period, these increasingly extravagant burial mounds were clustered around a few major hill forts to the southwest of the region. This suggests a development and a concentration of wealth and social power, possibly based on the development of Massilia, present-day Marseille, as a Greek trading port. The expansion of luxury trade brought greater opportunities for profit and helped to create an increasingly stratified society, with the development of a wealthy nobility. Over the period from 1846 to 1863, 1,000 graves were found at Hallstatt, with an astonishing range of artifacts, including clothing and salt mining equipment, as well as weapons, jewellery, pottery, and imported bronze vessels in the chieftains' graves. The Latène era was the time of Celtic expansion and migration, and the time of formation of the myths. The Latène culture is named after the site in Switzerland where it was first discovered. The Latène people were those known to the Romans as Gauls, originally found in an area from eastern France to Bohemia. The Latène culture spread rapidly from about 400 BC. The Latène Celts settled in Spain in 450 BC, in northern Italy in 400 BC, invaded Rome in 390 BC, invaded Greece in 279 BC, invaded Galatia in modern Turkey in 270 BC. By 200 BC, they occupied the lands that are now Britain, the Netherlands, Brittany, Belgium, Germany and Switzerland. There is much debate over how much of the expansion into Britain was achieved through invasion and settlement, and how much was the expression of cultural transfer that accompanied trade and reflected the commonality of kinship and language of many tribes. There is little evidence for actual migration of Latène people into Britain. Nevertheless, it does appear that the Latène culture was more militarily focused than the Hallstatt one. The Latène graves across Europe hold iron weapons, swords and spearheads, and wooden shields, as well as everyday items such as razors, yokes, cauldrons and jewellery.
That is the end of part 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
That is the end of the listening test.